right, so good afternoon and good evening, everyone. We're super excited to have you all with us today. Our guest speaker is here, and we'll let her introduce herself in just a second. But I just wanted to remind everyone that if you have questions, make sure you put them in the chat and also save them for the end. We're also doing our medical debate today after our guest speaker shadowing, so hopefully you've all had time to read through the debate document that has all the topics there. But I'll give it over to Danielle now.
Thank you so much. While I'm getting set up on my side and sharing my screen, I would love if folks can put in the chat where you're tuning in from so I can get a sense where folks are all tuning in from. Awesome. Seeing Miami, New York, Texas, Florida, Colorado, Toronto, Pennsylvania. That's where I'm tuning in from. Philly. Okay, cool. Awesome. It's so nice to see. Okay. So hopefully y'all can see my screen now, and feel free to keep adding where you are in the chat, but hopefully you can see my screen, and we'll start the presentation. So for those who don't know me, my name is Danny Schroeder, and my pronouns are she and her. I am a civil engineer in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, as I see a few folks are coming in from Philadelphia. And today I will be speaking about my journey into civil engineering, as well as what I'm calling family medicine adjacent, which I'll explain more in the next few slides. I will be answering questions at the end, so feel free to add them in the chat as I present. So a little bit about myself. I am a civil engineer in Philadelphia, working in the transportation industry. I graduated from a small high school in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania called St. Basil Academy. And I went to Drexel University for my degree program. So I completed the 5-year B.S. M.S. accelerated degree program. So in 2017, I graduated with both my bachelor's and master's in civil engineering. I earned my PE, or professional engineering license, in 2022, and I'm also the first engineer in my family. So the reason I'm calling this family medicine adjacent is that while I'm in the STEM profession, I'm not in medicine. And from what I understand, most of y'all are interested in studying some sort of career within the medicine field. However, my partner, Doug, is a family medicine physician, and we've been together since 2015 when we both studied at Drexel. Unfortunately, he currently already had patients scheduled for this time when we were asked to present. So he helped me put together some slides to share with all of y'all. So for the rest of the presentation, similar to if anyone is familiar with the online creators of Girlfriend Review on YouTube and other places, we're going to call this Fiance Review, or family medicine adjacent from the fiance perspective. As I cannot speak to the experience directly of what it's like to go through medical school and residency, but I know what it's like to be with someone who has gone through it. And like I said, we've been together since 2015. So it's undergrad, med school, residency, and now as a family medicine board certified physician. So getting a little bit more into about my partner, Doug. He is a family medicine physician in Glen Mills, Pennsylvania, and he went to the public school Bayard Rustin High School in Westchester, Pennsylvania. As I mentioned, we both went to Drexel University. He went through an additional accelerated program similar to me, but his accelerated program was that he could get his bachelor's and M.D. as part of this accelerated degree program. So I don't know if any presenters have talked about that yet, but I thought I would mention that, and we'll talk about it a little bit more about what goes into that program application. So his Bachelor of Science is in Biological Science, and then his Doctor of Medicine is from Drexel University College of Medicine. And as probably many of the speakers have already talked about, residency is part of becoming a doctor. So he completed his family medicine residency in York, PA. So a quick agenda of today's session. First, I'm going to talk about Drexel's BS plus MD program. Then I will talk about both myself and Doug's college years. Also, the major exams that both of us had to take as part of our professions. And give a general timeline, just so, especially for folks thinking about medicine, can see all the exams that are part of it. and then kind of review what we've been up to now as early career professionals. And lastly, we will be doing a Q&A at the end. And then before we continue and giving me some time to take a sip of water, I want to gauge where all of y'all are in your journey. So can you add in the chat what grade you're in? So are you in high school or 9th to 12th grade? Are you an undergraduate? Are you taking a gap year? I would love to know in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing a variety, seeing some high school. Okay. Undergrad, excellent. Cool. And keep that going as we'll go through. It's so nice to see, but yes, it does look like a good portion of folks are in high school right now. So that's good to see. So in that note, for our high school students, here is a little bit more information about Drexel's BS/BA plus MD accelerated degree program and the application. This is a 4+4 combined program that allows students to gain early acceptance into both their undergraduate program and the medical school at the same time. This program is open to the following majors that are also wanting to do that 4-year N1 co-op. So if anyone knows about Drexel, one of the main things that people think of when you think of Drexel is their co-op or internship program. So if you want to also do a co-op, also want to get your medical degree, you have 3 choices in terms of majors at Drexel. It would be the biological science, which is what my partner studied, chemistry, and biomedical engineering. So those are the 3 that have the co-op as part of it. Similar to what other speakers have probably talked about, there are various parts to these applications, but one thing in particular is that this application includes a 500-word essay on the following topic. So to tell the admission committee why you're applying for the joint program with the Drexel University College of Medicine, and be sure to explain why you want to be a physician, and more specifically, why you want to obtain your medical education at the Drexel University College of Medicine. So not only why physician, but also why specifically Drexel as part of that. In terms of the general timeline, this usually goes annually from November 1st, which is when you need to submit through the common application, to April 1st. So April 1st would be the latest that you would hear about being accepted into the program. And as part of the program, there's the application that I talked about. There's also interviews as part of that that'll be throughout that November, April timeframe. In terms of the fall 2022 profile, there were about 2,500 total applicants for this program. And 127 of those applicants were selected for an interview, and then 63 of those students were admitted into the program. And while all this information I just went through is Drexel specific, I wanted to walk you through some of those details, especially if you haven't heard of the option of a BS or BA plus MD program. As I know, several medical schools have these kind of partnership programs. So if there's already a dream school that you have in mind, this might be a great thing to look on their website to see if they have something like this especially for all my high school students that are tuning in today. So in terms of the applying for this application for the BS or BA plus MD accelerated degree, medicine, as you know, gathers a lot of incredibly smart individuals, and they all have a variety of interests and perspectives. So we recommend throughout your application to showcase how your interests and passions outside of medicine would impact and nuance your care to connect in unique ways to your patients. So again, be authentic to you, and everyone has their own story, but we want to see your unique story and how your lived experience is going to translate into what you want to be as a physician if you're applying for this program. Medicine is also a wonderful way to use the science we love to help people in our community. So demonstrating the love for continued learning in a growth mindset and acts of service that you're already doing of some sort of community service, even if it's not healthcare or medicine related, doing these acts of service for others around you will exemplify what it means to be a physician. And then also finding your why, and then building from your why to your how and your what will help you develop that mission statement and really make your application stand out. So on to my college experience. So throughout my 5-year program at Drexel, I completed 3 different co-ops or internships that were 6 months each, so that I could see how the classroom relates to the real world. I learned through classes and co-ops that civil engineering itself can be pretty broad, And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. I also did research my first year of college. So these first two photos at the bottom are first year Danny, so a few years ago. But during my research, I studied the stomatal conductance, or essentially the health of the plant, of two different species of plants to see what would do better in a regular drought and flood setting, so that these plants could be part of some green infrastructure in a city like New York City and kind of left to their own to survive, and see which would do the best in terms of survivability, I guess is the best way to put it. Through that, I kind of realized I didn't want to do research, but it was a great experience to find out what I liked and what I didn't like, similar to my co-ops. In my last year of college, I took the FE, or Fundamentals of Engineering exam, which is an 8-hour test that many engineers take. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about both my engineering exams as well as Doug's College of Medicine, or the path of timeline of all the exams you have to take to become a family medicine or board certified family medicine physician. And then lastly, for me, I was highly involved in student organizations, primarily Society of Women Engineers, or SWE, and I held several leadership positions during my time, including section president. And then January of my senior year, I interviewed at a few places, including one of them as a full-time opportunity at one of my past co-ops, and ultimately joined a private consulting firm as a bridge engineer, which is a subspecialty of civil engineering. In terms of Doug's college journey, and when I say college, I mean undergraduate here, the B.S. M.D. program did not include an internship during the undergrad when he was part of it. It wasn't an option. So that's also why as you'll see here, his program was a 3-year program. So the program has changed a little bit since he's been part of it. But similar to hopefully some of the folks on here, if you are taking AP classes, that can really help. Personally, Doug took AP classes for biology and math, and that helped him reduce the course load for his first year of undergrad, so that he didn't have to do any summer term classes, which other folks might have to do based on what classes they need to get before they can graduate that undergrad portion. Outside of school, he was engaged in multiple choir groups, including the Drexel a cappella group, outside of that typical course load of study. And yes, his a cappella group did compete in an event with a choreography similar to, if you are familiar with the movie Pitch Perfect. So it is definitely a sight to see of both singing without any music and also doing some sort of choreographed dance as part of it. So it's pretty cool. In terms of going to the MedCat, or MCAT, I should say, there are a few different test prep companies in Philadelphia. Doug particularly used Kaplan to go to in-person sessions that they would have to help study for the MCAT that he took during his second year of undergrad. Quick note, the MCAT has changed slightly since he has taken it. So the scoring's a little bit different in terms of what the Drexel program is looking for. They request that you get a minimum MCAT score of 128 in 3 sections, and the sections are chemical and physical foundations of biological systems, biological and biochemical foundations of living systems, and the psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior. So keeping that in mind, that getting that MCAT score to be part of a specific program like this. In terms of once you're in the BSMD program, the network of those other BSMD students was so helpful to be able to get tutors from upperclassmen to help, or even just studying resources for tough classes, or if you had an option between 2 classes of saying, oh, maybe this one, you might want to take this one, if this is the way that you learn, because this is the style that teacher teaches. And the GPA that's listed on here, you do need to keep that 3.6 GPA in all coursework, but you also need to do that as a major specific one too. So they'll check both of your overall score or your overall GPA as well as that major specific one. So in terms of Doug or my partner's med school journey, so post-undergraduate, medical school certainly does move at a faster pace than undergraduate. I'm sure you've heard about this from our fellow speakers. The first 4 years, or of the 4 years that you're typically in medical school, the first 2 are called the preclinical years. These years typically have lectures that are recorded and in person. They also have the lectures recorded and then also do some in-person small group discussions through different cases relevant to the systems taught. So it'll be, this patient is this year's old and they're having these symptoms, and you work as a group to figure out, okay, what might be going on with them. And it's usually related to the system that you're talking about. So for example, when he was learning about the musculoskeletal system, there would be a microanatomy slides of muscle cells. So you would typically go in person to look under a microscope, but now there's a lot of things that you can just do these virtually, displaying the slides for the class, as well as gross anatomy or the cadaver lab, where as a group, they would dissect a body that was donated for education to better understand all the muscles and bones to see where they attach and their function. And all of these classes in the preclinical years were pass-fail. Then in the second year of preclinical years, there was more of a focus on how these systems can go wrong. So you learn about all the systems, and then we go into how they can go wrong. So for example, you might have a class like pathology, where it looks at the causes and the effects of diseases, microorganisms that can cause infections, or pharmacology for medicines that you would use to treat it, to treat the various diseases. And at the end of second year, there was some free time to allow dedicated approximately 6 to 10 weeks for studying for the step 1 exam. And similar to, as I've said before, since he has taken the step 1 exam, it has turned into now a pass-fail test, as opposed to when my partner was taking this exam, it did have a specific numerical score. Again, the network of upper years through the B.S. M.D. program would help guide all of the students in the younger years and recommend various resources. If folks have heard of Pathoma or Sketchy, where there's these online programs that if you learn a specific way, Sketchy might be a really good thing to look out, because it's, they draw the different things and they put the mnemonics to it to really help you learn in a different way than you might be learning in the classroom. On to the clinical years, which would be that 3rd and 4th year of med school. Drexel did have Hahnemann Hospital as the core site, though at the time they already had that strong network of systems and hospitals and offices to rotate with and learn those core specialties. In terms of Drexel, the core rotations are pediatrics, internal medicine, or the adult medicine in the office and in the hospital, surgery, obstetrics and gynecology, or OBGYN, as you might have heard it, psychiatry, and family medicine. Through these rotations, through 3rd and 4th year, he did get to try on many specialties and discover his likes and dislikes, similar to my experience with my internships during undergrad. And through the rotations, he learned numerous EMRs, or electronic medical records, and met some excellent faculty. This helped him in his residency interviews, as he met some faculty and residents at programs that he ended up applying to for residency. And at the end of 3rd year, he took step 2, which at the time had 2 parts, but since then it is only now 1 part. So you have 1 less exam to take if you follow in my partner's footsteps. In terms of 4th year, there was more flexible time for away rotations and time for interviews. As interviews, you need to interview for those various residency programs. And then the last year of medical school, or that year 4, culminates in match day in March of that year. And then also going back to outside of the classroom, Doug still made time for, at least in his preclinical years, so those first 2 years, he still made time to sing in an a cappella group, a part of Drexel's College of Medicine that was called Doctor's Note. So these 2 photos up here are from that a cappella group that he was still able to maintain, even with the heavy course load of med school. And then why family medicine? So again, going back to match day, he matched into family residency or family medicine residency. In terms of family medicine, it appealed to him as he had excellent mentors in his field and got to be part of the impactful conversation in people's lives. He saw the amazing relationship and rapport that people develop with their physicians of 40 years as he worked with experienced faculty through his rotations throughout med school. And then while obstetric care or delivering babies is no longer part of my partner's current work that he does, he maintains practice for the complete life cycle from newborns through hospice through end of life care. And during his primary care, during his work in primary care, he's also realized how the factors beyond an individual's control can impact their lives. So he's realized how important it is to advocate for each patient, both as an individual, but also as a community. So this advocacy happens anywhere from helping expedite important workup like blood, having to get certain complete blood counts or et cetera, to speaking with legislators at the state and national level to provide perspective on upcoming and needed bills. So this top photo that you see here is from when my partner Doug went to DC and spoke with PA senators and representatives about the importance of mental health access and telehealth, among other topics. And then the other bottom photo that you see here is from Drexel's new health science building in their simulated patient center, where this new health science building is where Drexel's College of Medicine will be starting to shift to this coming fall. Going back to the med school part of everything, throughout that education and training, you'll become more familiar with these simulated patients for learning. So especially giving you the opportunity to learn about a higher intensity care situation, such as CPR or running a resuscitation in a simulated event, so that the first time that you're seeing it is on a real person, ergo the simulated patient. These simulated labs have gotten really advanced to be able to change the clinical symptoms based on actions that you as the soon-to-be physician take. So even simple things like shining a flashlight at the pupils of the simulated patient made them constrict, as you can see in the picture here. It was pretty cool to see. The simulated patient also had like its different chest movements. So if they're doing something in terms of their person having labored breathing, they're able to code that into the simulated patient, which is really cool. On to my partner's family medicine residency. So residency for a family medicine soon-to-be physician is a 3-year program. Again, depending on what specialty you match into, it will vary on how long your program is. During his first year of residency, he had many off-service rotations through other specialties in the hospital, not unlike the 3rd year of med school. As you can see, he was in residency from 2019 to 2022. So the pandemic did hit around here during March of his intern year, which definitely increased the video visits and home visits for vulnerable patients that kind of shifted what his normal schedule would have been for 2nd year. Additionally, COVID kind of disrupted the step 3 testing because his step 3 testing was then deferred because the testing centers were closed for a portion of time. So he did pass his 2-day test in the fall of 2nd year of his residency. In terms of his 2nd year of residency, it did involve overseeing the new interns and allowed for more teaching of the interns and the medical students that he once was that are now on rotation during his residency. And unfortunately, in a COVID outbreak in the nursing home, he got pulled into the ICU. So he did have some different schedules as well, being pulled into the ICU or the intensive care unit and floors for additional coverage, which kind of was a little bit different of what the normal schedule he would have had for his family medicine residency. In terms of the 3rd year, it definitely had more built-in elective time. So if you want to focus on something specific, this is the time that you can go and kind of work with those specific rotations. What Doug likes to focus on is education, or my partner likes to focus on education. So he used this elective time to develop a website for the residency program internal to all of the residents to gather common resources, host lecture recordings that they would have throughout the years, give them a place for practice questions, and as well as developing some simulated cases. And then lastly, he passed his board exam in April and finished his residency in June. And then coming up to the present, he started as a family doctor in August of 2022. Okay, we're almost at the end of going through the medical side of my partner's journey. So into the present of the early career professional, Doug works in an outpatient family medicine role. By outpatient, I mean he's in the office and not in a hospital. And also, again, not obstetrics, so no delivering of babies. PCP, or primary care physician, although his background is in family medicine, you could either be a family medicine physician or have a specialty in pediatrician or babies, and internal medicine are all other options to becoming a PCP or primary care physician. Outside of work, but still connected to work, Doug is also involved in professional societies. So he's involved with AAFP, or the American Academy of Family Physicians, PAFP, or the Pennsylvania Academy of Family Physicians, and ACP, or the American College of Physicians. He recently attended the National Convention for AAFP and also the annual convention for ACP, where he met Dr. Paul Williams, which is that top photo. And for folks who don't know, Dr. Paul Williams is the host of the Curbsiders, or a co-host of the Curbsiders, which is a medical podcast where the hosts are primary care docs, and they interview specialists about common topics that happen or that occur in primary care, which is really cool. It's kind of like meeting a celebrity at a conference in terms of the physician side of things. And then outside of work, he's been playing more tennis since finishing med school and residency. And then also he and I are planning our wedding for next year. So we've got a little bit more time for planning our wedding. And in terms of giving you an exam timeline, here is Doug's exams outside of college that he had to take to become a board certified family med physician. So first, as we kind of talked about, that first main thing is the MCAT, or the medical college admission test. This is taken prior to the admission cycle of med school, which for him was the second year of 3 years of undergrad. So again, he had technically a conditional acceptance into that college of medicine. You don't need to take your MCAT earlier than you've had any of those undergrad classes to be accepted, but there is that conditional part if you don't get that score of certain things that kind of go into that. Next, as you can see, he graduated from his undergrad with a Bachelor of Science in Biological Sciences, and then went into med school. And the first part, or the first exam outside of your typical College of Medicine exams, is step 1. So Doug took his step 1 at the end of second year in med school, and it culminates much of the book learning or systems completed before starting those clinical rotations. Though some schools take this later, some schools combine as a preferred timeline of step 1 and step 2 very soon after each other, but just giving you the example of what Doug went through. In terms of step 2, he took his step 2 at the end of third year of medical school. And then this exam generally starts to include more of the medical knowledge needed to take care of patients. And that information is needed for rotations on third year of the patient care part, as opposed to making sure that you understand the systems or how diseases can be affected or different medical interactions of different drug interactions and such. And as I mentioned prior, step 2 used to be 2 tests. It used to be clinical skills and clinical knowledge, which is why this has a CK and CS. But now they have dropped the CS and it is just the clinical knowledge. So it is similar to step 1 in terms of format for this. Step 3, he took his second year of residency, like I said, due to a delay with the testing centers because of COVID, but otherwise in a more common timeline for this, it's usually taken during that first year of residency. And then in residency, there would be yearly in-training exams, which were practice tests for the board exam that you would need in addition to graduating to become board certified. So again, all of these exams are for any physician. And then the last exam is your board exam. So the board exam will be relevant to your specific specialty. So like I said, he's a board certified family physician. So his board exam was family medicine related. There are many different ones based on what specialty that you go into. And he took this exam in April of his third and final year of residency, just prior to graduation. Some folks may wait until they graduate, take a little bit of time off, and then take their board exam. Again, he went immediately into becoming a physician, but some doctors will go into additional specialties. So they may do 3 years of either family medicine residency or an internal medicine residency, and then go into a fellowship to learn more about a specific field, such as neurology or the brain, cardiology or the heart, or nephrology or the kidneys. And lastly, another one of an option is endocrinology, which would be your various glands and hormones. Another option is you could start in a surgical residency and go into a subspecialty like orthopedics, which is focused just on your bones, plastic surgery, which is cosmetic, and neurosurgery, which would be going back to the brain. So a lot of different paths that you can go through. Okay, and now finally back to me for a little bit more of my journey before we wrap up. There are several exams that I have to take as an engineer outside of college. The first was the FE, or the Fundamentals of Engineering, which I mentioned during my college slide. I personally recommend, when I talk to folks that are interested in studying engineering, that if you can sit for the FE exam at least once before graduation, to definitely do so. At this point, I had already secured my job post-graduation, but I did hear from a lot of colleagues that being able to include, past FE exam on their resume was so helpful in standing out as part of their job search for their first full-time job. I thankfully passed the FE on the first try and then graduated college soon after. And then as part of my engineering experience in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you then need 4 years at least of progressive engineering experience. So that's, once I graduated, worked at a private consulting firm, got my progressive engineering experience, and then was able to sit for the PE exam, which is how I got my licensed professional, or became a licensed professional engineer. As you can see here, I had to take the PE exam twice. I failed it first in June, but picked myself back up, maybe binge watch a show or two, and then got back to studying and thankfully passed the second time. And then up to the present for me, I am a civil engineer, again, in the transportation industry, working at a private consulting firm. I've gotten to work on some amazing projects, including the retrofit of the Burlington-Bristol Bridge, which is the photo here on the middle. So if we have any I know we have some people from Pennsylvania and New Jersey, so you might be familiar with this bridge. So that's been a really cool thing to be able to extend the life of that bridge. In terms of certifications, or all those letters behind my name on the first slide, I became a professional engineer last year, but I'm also an Envision Certified Sustainability Professional, or ENVSP. What that means essentially is that I'm certified in making infrastructure projects more sustainable using the Envision rating tool. And similar to college, I'm still highly involved with SWE. I recently finished up my 3-year term as a SWE senator, and this photo on the bottom is from the SWE Senate in 2019. So all of these fantastic folks that you see on this screen are engineers in their fields, in their respective fields, doing fantastic things. So it was really cool to be part of such a great group of people. And as I mentioned on Doug's slide, we are currently planning our wedding. So that also takes a lot of my free time outside of work. So to close out the presentation before we take questions, just want to give you a few closing advice. As many of you are getting ready to apply to med school or the college, just college in general, I want to emphasize for you to focus on that why through those personal statements or interviews if your program requires them. So every story is different, so let your unique story shine through your application materials. Next, find your squad. As you can see by both my and Doug, my partner's career journey so far, we've gotten some great opportunities to learn, but there were definitely some bumps along that road. Both of us found a great support system in each other, but also have a variety of mentors and colleagues that we leaned on for advice throughout college, as well as up to today, as shown on the screen. So these two photos kind of represent some of our support squads outside of each other. Through taking part in this program right now, you're building a network of folks from around the world that might have similar interests as you. So please do take advantage of this network. And I hear that there's a Slack channel, so make sure that you're connecting with folks through that Slack channel throughout this program, as they might even become part of your support team in the future if they're not already. And then lastly, don't be afraid to ask questions or for help. The reason I'm speaking with all of you today is that one of our med STEM powered folks reached out to me on my Instagram and asked if Doug and I could speak. So if you see someone on social media or at an in-person event that has a career that sounds interesting to you, don't be afraid to reach out and ask them about their career journey. As for the help part, the education part of these fields can be tough. So don't be afraid to reach out to your academic counselor when you need help or if you're struggling with the class. I know personally, I went to tutoring that was provided by my College of Engineering when I was struggling with classes because there was a few classes that I needed to go to tutoring for. With that, thank you so much for having me today. What questions do you have for me? Also, if you have any questions for my partner or me after the session, you can add them or you can send them to this email address on the screen. I'll be sure to pass them along. Any of the questions that are directly for Doug, my partner, I'll pass them directly along to him since I know where he lives. So what questions do y'all have?
Awesome. Okay, so if you have questions for Danny, please make sure you either raise your hand or ask them in the chat, and then I can kind of flip between the two. But first, before we answer questions, we have a little tradition that we like to do where we give our guest speakers a little virtual round of applause. So if everyone would be comfortable doing that now, that would be lovely. Just to say thank you to Danny for taking the time to come and speak to us about her and her partner Doug's journeys. It was wonderful. Thank you so much for all of the time that you put into your presentation and now for answering questions. Okay, so I'll flip back and forth between calling on people that have their hands raised. And if you have questions you want to ask Danny, please put them in the chat so I can ask for those as well. But we'll start with Ala, who has their hand up.
I just wanted to ask if I wanted to study biomedical science, I need to have the MCAT exam.
If you want to do biological science itself, no, you don't need the MCAT. The MCAT is more particular if you want to go to the College of Medicine after the fact. Biological science has so many things that you can go to in itself. So you could do similar to, I'll see if it looks
I don't mean biological science. I want especially biomedical science, biomedical.
Biomedical. Okay. Again, if you want to just start or just finish at, a bachelor's of science in biomedical engineering or biomedical science, you can stop there. The MCAT is only for the College of Medicine part of it. So there are a variety of different careers. I know this is med and STEM powered. There's so many things within just STEM that you can get into and just go to that. But MCAT would be medical school specific.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll ask a question from the chat now. So someone asks, how are you and Doug able to balance your relationship with your own career, such as medical school, since they both seem pretty time consuming?
Oh, that is a good question. It's a lot of work, and it includes a lot of communication. I didn't include a lot of the photos in here, but as I was putting photos together for this, there was many of them where there were Snapchats of us sitting at the library and we were both studying our relative, course material, and we were still, having quality time, but we were studying. So it's really about that communication and keeping yourself as organized as possible. I know I live by my Google Calendar and making sure that I time block things. Of course, things don't always go to plan, but keeping organized and communicating was kind of the best way that we focused and communicated and focused on our careers, but also focused on our relationship and having that from 2015 to now, planning a wedding.
Awesome. Okay, so I think Kaylin has their hand up.
Can you hear me? Sorry. Hi, I really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. I've heard a lot about M.D.s. M.D. programs being very competitive. I know a few of the ones I've looked into have made it very clear that it's a very selective process. So I'd like to know a bit more about your experience with both the application process and what it was like getting in. Do you think the environment is more competitive? Do you feel like you didn't see that side of it a lot. You were more collaborating with your peers than competing against them. I'd just like your opinion on that.
Yeah, I will definitely follow up with my partner Doug a little bit more about that part, since we were not dating at that part of the pre-application. But I can tell you, just when we were looking at those numbers, 63 folks got in 2022, and it was over 2,700 people that applied. So it definitely is a small number that gets in. But what I can speak about now is once you are in, that group of the BS plus MD current cohort, and then also like the year above, and eventually the years under, were so helpful to each other, that they were, we want to keep together. We want everyone to maintain, like, again, once you're in, you have to keep that 3.6 GPA and all of that. So they kind of like, again, of the support system that I showed for my partner, all of those people in that photo were from his BS MD class, and are some of his greatest friends that he's met through the program. So once you are through the program, I know that the cohort gets very close, which is kind of cool. But I can follow up with my partner and see about anything about the application process part of it.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. Okay, our next question, I'm skipping the ones that are specific for Doug, just because we can pass them along to Doug later. But the next question for you is, how did you both manage to stay together through your career journeys, especially involving things like living arrangements and budgeting and finances?
That is a great question, because as I mentioned, so College of Medicine, when Doug was there, was in Queens Lane, which is like 30 minutes max from Center City, Philadelphia. So that wasn't too far. But as you saw, his residency was out in York, PA, which, if folks aren't familiar, that's about like a 2.5 hour drive from Philadelphia. So that was definitely a different part of it. For that specifically, again, it goes back to the communication. I went to my boss, again, this was 2019. So I went to my boss and said, hey, we have a Mechanicsburg office. Could I temporarily transfer to that office for the time being, so that I can live with my partner out in Mechanicsburg? And again, knowing that the residency was only 3 years, that was kind of nice to know. And then, as you can hear from our story, again, that was 2019. By the time I was moving out there, it was the early 2020 was when I was planning to move out there, that we were going to live together. That it didn't necessarily matter as much because we were all working virtually, but it went down to that communication part in terms of living together and of that, and making that part work. Because again, going with the personal finance part, if you can live with a significant other or a roommate, that can bring your cost of living in half or even more, depending on how many roommates you have. And that was definitely helpful for us to, starting out our careers.
Awesome. Okay, our next hand raise is Bobby.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, since you did civil engineering, do you have the ring?
Great question. So it's like, you can see my engagement ring, but you can also see my ring. And for folks that don't know what we're talking about, this is a tradition that started in Canada, but the US also has something specific. But this is the Order of the Engineer. So once you graduate, or soon to be graduate, they have the Order of the Engineer that you go through. Canadians do something a little bit specific that they can't talk about, but the US part of it is just really focused on that you're going to be ethical in all that you do in terms of being an engineer. It is a pinky ring that you wear on the hand that you write with. I know most of us are, using a keyboard and doing a lot of things digitally, but like the significance of it was that the ring would remind you every time that you're writing something or signing something, because it would be hitting what you would be signing. So great question, a part of the engineering side that I wasn't expecting. So thank you for that. All the questions have been fantastic, but that one I was not expecting on this call.
Okay, so our next question from the chat is, how did you find your passion for engineering?
Okay. So for me, one, it took a little bit longer. I didn't choose engineering until my junior year of high school. So for folks sometimes, like I know we have some ninth graders here that are already like thinking about wanting to become a physician. I didn't necessarily want to know what I wanted to do, but I really liked math and science. And my biology teacher saw that there was an engineering camp for girls that was coming up at a local college, so Widener University, if anyone knows. And she said, you know, you like math and science, you should go. And literally that is my origin story for studying engineering, because I went there, I absolutely loved it. I got to meet women who are both currently in the field doing fantastic things in engineering and variety of different engineering, but also current engineering students. So I got to see like the full life cycle, which was really cool. And that ultimately helped me choose engineering and then civil engineering specifically.
Amazing. Okay, so our next hand up is Rania.
Hi, thank you so much. My question I want to ask, now I'm in high school and last year, so when I'm done with high school, what is the specific major I have to take in the university that after this I can go to med school?
So that is a great question, because there is no right answer. Again, my partner has an undergraduate in biological science. So if you're going with the B.S. plus M.D. program, they do have specific ones that you have to take as part of their program. But if you're doing I'll say unaccelerated program, like a different program, you can come from any different variety of background. I know there was someone that studied something related to yoga. I apologize, I don't remember what her actual major was, but it was something of that she was a yoga teacher and then applied for College of Medicine. You can have a psychology background. I know some of Doug's classmates from College of Medicine did computer engineering. So there is a variety of different backgrounds. So my answer is, what is unique to you and what are you interested in? Are you interested in the human body and you want to go into the biological science part of it? Or, you know, there's the biomedical engineering, there's computer engineering, Bachelor of Arts, as I see in there's so many different backgrounds that you can come from. As long as you know your why and show, I want it, this is my background because I think this is important to bringing this to the field of medicine, that is the right answer for you. And being able to show that in that, again, med school application of why I chose this as my undergraduate degree, because I knew this would help me bring this unique perspective to the College of Medicine. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you so much. For me, what I love is biotechnology or computer science. So I want to ask if this will be good or related to completing medical school after this, and if there's any requirement to the major can be chemistry or physics or any requirement.
Can you repeat the back part of your question? I think you froze for a second.
I asked if there's any requirement for the majors. It should contain chemistry or physics, or it's all only what I love to study.
Gotcha. So yes, depending on what you pick as that college major, you can typically pick a sample school, college, and say, I want to study, physics. And you go on there and it'll show you all that's part of a typical physics degree. You can change those classes, but it'll show up there, this is what's usually part of it. I think you were mentioning in the beginning of computer engineering, and that can be a great background into the College of Medicine, because again, I was showing you that technology of the simulated patient. Like there's a lot of coding, there's a lot that goes into understanding the biological systems and then being able to take a simulated patient that is a fancy robot and being able to combine those together. So just one example of whatever you pick as an undergraduate degree can really help you with that application moving forward.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take a couple more questions from the chat. So someone asks, for how many years do you need to study to become an engineer?
So I love to talk about this. I don't know if the people that are very interested about being physicians want to hear this, but one of the great things about being an engineer is that it's only required to have an undergraduate degree. So I didn't necessarily need my master's of science to get a role. Many of my colleagues that were at Drexel only got their BS in civil engineering or an engineering degree, and then went into got their first full-time job. So unlike becoming a lawyer or a physician or others, it is not required to get into the field. So that's part of it. So I could have done my degree in 4 years minimum, and then went into full-time as an engineer. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yes. Okay. Our next question is, you said to focus on your why. So what was your why? And then why did you specifically pick civil engineering?
Yeah. So I think my why has developed throughout. Again, as I started going back to high school me, I just really liked my math and science, and I knew I wanted to do something with math and science. So I think before I went to that engineering camp, I was really focused on becoming maybe a math or science teacher, was maybe what I was thinking in terms of the background. Going to that engineering camp, finding that this would be a fantastic way to take math and science and problem solving together is kind of why I chose engineering. And then civil engineering specifically, infrastructure is so cool to me, which, I don't know if all of y'all can relate, but like when I am not the one driving, so usually when my partner's driving and I'm in the passenger seat, if we're going under bridges, I'm looking up at the bridges and I'm looking at the beams and seeing all the beams, the abutments and everything, and looking at that. I don't think that's a normal thing for people that might not be civil engineers. So that kind of showed me that I was like, no, this is what I want to get into, that infrastructure, all that is part of that fascinated me. So that's kind of where my why started. Now that, I am post-graduation, and again, I really liked the teaching side of it before I picked civil engineering. My focus has kind of been both rebuilding our physical infrastructure, as I talked about that Burlington to Bristol, and extending the life of that bridge. That's like about 100-year-old bridge at this point. So be able to extend the physical infrastructure of our world. But at the same time, I get to inspire the minds of the future through STEM outreach like this. So that has kind of become my know your why, or my personal statement.
Awesome. So our last question for today was, how do you deal with obstacles or setbacks or even failure, like failing an exam or something?
Yeah, well, as you saw from my story, I did have to take the PE exam twice. In terms of failure, I also had to withdraw and take a undergraduate class twice, or I withdrew from it. So maybe I could have, passed ultimately, but when you're faced with seeing what your grade is at that point, or you get as I got for the PE exam, that big red fail, it stings. I'm not going to lie to you. It stings to see that. But the important part is okay, it happened. Take some time off. Like I said, I think I binge watched Never Have I Ever or something of that to, take some time off. And then I talked to mentors. I talked to my squad, my support team, and said, okay, how do I get myself back on track? How do I pass this class next time? How do I pass this exam next time? And then really getting into a study schedule or whatever I needed, going to tutoring if it was that class in undergrad, and having that support squad also be the people that keep me in check and make sure, hey, are you studying for that exam? Are you up to date? What do you need help with? So it's kind of take some time to yourself when you get that failure or that obstacle. Then go talk to that sports squad, talk it out, see what needs to be done moving forward, and then try it again. Because the thing I like to say about failure or fail, is the first attempt in learning. So you're trying again. If the more times that you're trying and keeping with it is going to keep helping. So having that resilience and continuing with it is important, because maybe you were only a few points away from passing that exam, or for not withdrawing from the class.
Awesome. Okay, so that's all the time that we have for live questions, but we will share your email and your social media with everybody after. So if they have any questions or want to connect, they'll be able to do that.
Awesome. Well, Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Okay, so I'm gonna launch our attendance poll now. I'll give everyone a minute to do this. It's really simple, just who was our guest speaker today, and then what was their profession. And I'll give everyone a sec to answer. While that is happening, I'm gonna send the medical debate topics in the chat again, in case anyone needs the link. We hope that you've done some research on all these topics and have come ready to discuss. The way that it'll work is Ahmad, Tanuja, and myself will be in 3 different breakout rooms, and we're going to equally split all of you between those breakout rooms. We're hoping to just be flies on the wall and to just let you know when you can move on to the next topic. But if we notice that conversation is a little bit lacking, we'll try to ask some questions to get it back up. And we will broadcast a message when you should be moving on to the next topic. Yeah, does anyone have any questions before we get started with our debate? And yes, we will be discussing all of the topics. We might not have time for the bonus topic depending on how long your other sessions or how long the other segments take, but we will be getting to discuss all of them. Okay, I see Kaylin, you have your hand up.
Hi, how big are the groups going to be?
That's a great question. So as of right now, I think the groups are between 60 and 70 people.
Okay.
Ishita?
Are we using more of a Socratic and discussion-based format, or are we trying to follow like some sort of debate structure?
So we included some questions on the doc that are kind of some like general points of discussion. But yeah, it's not there's not a super strict structure, just trying to follow the questions and then trying to make sure that people that want to speak get the chance to. Fadi, did you have a question?
Yes. So, there's a bonus question. When will we discuss that one? Or will we discuss that at the end altogether?
So if there's time in each of your breakout rooms at the end of the session after you've discussed all of the 4 regular topics, then you can discuss it. Or if you get to the end and you have to pick between either medical healthcare or the bonus one, your breakout room leader will ask if you want to pick one of them, and then you can do that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Zainab?
Can we use certain points of evidence as like quotes in between our discussions?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Ahmed and then I'm gonna make the breakout rooms. Oh, okay. I think Ahmed asked a question in the chat, so we are all good. I'm gonna make the rooms now. Again, we're just really there to be making a note of participants that are going above and beyond, and then just to help facilitate discussion if it seems to be not working super great.